Good morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ, and today we're going to be discussing solely what is going to be happening in far northern Queensland relating to tropical lows and tropical cyclones in about 5 days' time. If you are brand new to the channel, then please do consider subscribing, and if you haven't already, leave a like on the video as well. It really does help out, and give me a weather report for your location in the comment section down below. Taking a look at the Queensland situation right now, you can see we're expecting that big monsoon trough to develop across the Northern Territory and then into far northern Queensland, and we're expecting a couple of tropical lows to spit themselves out of it. The Bureau of Meteorology especially keen on West Australian systems, which we will discuss because they play a big role in shaping the forecast for Queensland, but also the major forecast models expecting something to develop off the far northern Queensland coastline in about 6 or 7 days' time from now. So zooming into far northern Queensland, specifically the Cairns, Townsville area, they've had a drenching overnight. Some places have copped up to 150 millimetres, and some even more than that. We've had severe thunderstorm warnings as well, and the rainfall that I've been saying is coming for the past couple of days, it certainly did materialise last night. It's just this very speckly shower stuff. It doesn't even look that severe on the radar imagery, especially as you zoom out, but if you play a 1 hour loop through, you can see that this stuff is quite slow moving, and when you're talking about moderate to heavy rainfall totals that are slow moving and they get themselves over a specific location for a couple of hours, that's just where you see the 150 to 200 millimetre totals that we have been seeing across parts of far northern Queensland, especially around Cairns and Innisfail. The rain is not going to stop either. Between Cairns and Innisfail today, I'd say a further at least 100 millimetres is going to fall for some locations. Eastern RBF being a little bit lenient on the rainfall, I'd say, especially considering the circumstances. It's not going to be as wet as it was overnight. However, still a significant amount of rainfall can be expected as we see this onshore flow really move ashore. Cairns itself only expecting 15 millimetres. They're actually quite protected from the mountains towards the south of them. I've only just realised that actually from a flow like this. But Innisfail, Tarlee, Babinda, Belendon, Kerr, and then inland towards Atherton and Ravenshoe as well, expect some significant rainfall totals, and that also extends down the coastline through Lucinda and down towards Townsville too. The Queensland coastline, however, the remainder of it, except up in far northern Queensland, remaining quite dry. Now, I did say that we're going to take a look at these tropical lows. As you can see, as we get through towards Saturday, the monsoon trough across Western Australia is really starting to strengthen, and this is because of an effect that I've talked about in previous videos, but it's called the Madden-Julian oscillation. Now, it's basically, you can think of it like a big sphere of energy that moves, I believe, counterclockwise around the planet. Right now, the MJO, which is this big sphere of tropical energy, is located around Java and Sumatra, over the top of Indonesia, and over the coming couple of days, it's going to be heading further east. In about 4 or 5 days' time, it will be located over Papua New Guinea, and that's where we're going to see a lot more tropical energy, which will drive these upcoming tropical cyclones start around Wednesday and Thursday next week. This will all start to make sense as we get through this video, but this big sphere of energy is powering a forming tropical cyclone out of 08U, which the Bureau of Meteorology is very keen on forming, and I do actually reckon that it's got a pretty good shot of becoming at least a Category 1 strength tropical cyclone briefly by early next week, and it's also now very confident in forming another tropical cyclone. The forecast models are, they're very confident in another tropical cyclone over West Australia. Now, I know this title is for Queensland, and this is important because this West Australian tropical cyclone will have a big role to play in Queensland. As you can see, a lot of the energy from this from the West Australian system will be taken away from the Queensland system associated with this monsoon trough. So as this West Australian system develops, we've now seen the Queensland system pushed further out into the Coral Sea, and I'm just going to look at it briefly right now before I really break down the nitty-gritty of it in a couple of minutes. But you can see as the WA system forms, this system is now a little bit further out to sea. The Eastern Relief is actually a pretty bad example of this because they don't have the West Australian system getting quite strong, but the Access G3 model does, and you can see as this cyclone gets quite strong by next weekend that the Queensland system has been pushed right out into the Coral Sea. This will still deliver Queensland some impacts, especially in the form of large seas, heavy rainfall and damaging winds, but it's not going to be as bad as a direct hit from a tropical cyclone. So the best case scenario for Queensland right now is if these two tropical cyclones form and they do get quite strong. The only problem with me bringing up this and using the Axis G3 model is the fact that the Axis G3 model is a notorious overestimator. So we're more likely going to see something from what the ECMWF has to say, which is where we see a weak tropical cyclone still a little bit further out to sea. For the last couple of days, we've seen this system hugging the coastline of Queensland. Now we're starting to see it a couple of hundred nautical miles offshore, which is a better case scenario than it hugging the coast, of course. Yeah, 3 weak tropical cyclones or strong tropical lows is probably what's actually going to end up happening here, and especially considering this season hasn't really produced strong tropical cyclones yet, it's kind of hard to really see these systems getting quite strong. Tropical low 08U is the most likely one to get towards severe tropical cyclone status. The Queensland one's going to be battling dry air and also high wind shear. Conditions do start to get quite hostile in the Coral Sea by around March and into early April, and as we start to get through towards mid-March, we're getting towards the end of the Queensland cyclone season. Normally activity starts to wrap up by around mid-March in Queensland because of the higher wind shear and more unfavourable conditions. But mid-March to mid-April is it's boom time really for the West Australian area, so I would not be surprised if we do see some strong cyclone activity out of this, which will suppress the Queensland situation. Now that's a lot. That's a very brief overlook at what's actually happening. Well, it's not really brief, but it's an overlook at what's actually happening in the environment and how all these systems do relate to each other. If you've got any questions or you need another oversimplification, then leave it in the comment section down below and I'll try and get back to your question. If you haven't already, then please do leave a like on the video as well and subscribe to the channel. We just hit 12,000 subscribers, so thank you so much for the recent support. It's been fantastic. We're going to now take a look at the details regarding this tropical low for far northern Queensland. Now, it has gotten better. The forecast has actually gotten better for far northern Queensland overnight. It's still a lot of rainfall and maybe some damaging winds as well, especially over the next 24 hours. You can still expect quite a lot of rainfall. It's just this speckly onshore heavy shower activity that's being blown ashore between Townsville up towards Cooktown. But this rainfall is going to head further north throughout today and then into tomorrow. So it's no longer going to be Townsville to Cairns after Saturday morning. It's going to be Cairns and further north. Still though, Saturday evening and Sunday morning could still see some heavy showers through there. There will likely be some locations that pick up 150 to 200 millimeters before Sunday morning here. Saturday could be quite a wet day, that's for sure. So could Sunday. But by around Monday, this rainfall should slowly start to head further north. Don't get me wrong, there will be showers in this area throughout the entire week, but they will slowly start to ease off. Over the next 3 days, areas around Cairns and Innisfail expecting up to 150 more millimeters of rainfall. I reckon that that's a little bit of an underestimation rather because of model resolution. It is very hard to get accurate detail in these mountains through here in far northern Queensland. I'm going to give you an example of model resolution right now, actually. The GFS model is not necessarily wrong, but it's because it's got a 20 kilometer model resolution. The numbers don't mean anything, but they're just for use of a comparison thing. So 20 kilometer resolution, and the GFS can only predict up to 70 or 80 millimeters here. Now the ECMWF model with its 9 kilometer resolution can pick up to 120 millimeters. Both forecasters are calling for the exact same weather events to come ashore. It's just because the ECMWF has a greater model resolution, it's able to really iron out the details in what's going to be happening, especially in these mountain valleys. Over the next 5 days, expect up to 200 to 300 millimeters around Innisfail and Tully. Cairns itself seems like it's in a bit of a rain dome, actually. They're only getting about 20 to 30 millimeters. I reckon that's a little bit wrong. I reckon Cairns itself could get up to 100 millimeters. And again, under the right shower band, there will be places that, as I've said, triple this forecast rainfall total. There's a lot of rainfall coming ashore, a lot of moisture in the air. Now, as this system forms up further north, as I've been saying for the past couple of minutes, the rainfall should be pulled further north from these systems. We'll take a look now at the ECMWF forecast model because it is kind of the all-rounder model that we've been using for this video, and it's a great cyclone model to use in the long range at least. The Axis is pretty good at finding systems in the long range, but the ECMWF is much better at forecasting them. Now, the system's been pushed back yet another day. We're actually meant to, just a week ago, we're meant to have this system forming by around Tuesday. We're now expecting it to form into a tropical low by around Thursday. So it's been pushed back by about 2 or 3 days at this point. But still though, it tries to get to cyclone status. You can really see it's going to be battling with dry air at this point. Dry air is really bad because it doesn't allow those thunderstorms around the center to really fire up. And it looks like it might also be battling a little bit of wind shear as well. If we go up to the upper level atmosphere, you can see there will definitely be a lot of wind shear towards the south of it, but where the storm is, it's okay. It's fair wind shear of about 15 knots. So the thunderstorms in the storm centre shouldn't be too heavily impacted. Now, this thing does come ashore as a strong tropical low, maybe a very borderline Category 1 cyclone. It's going to do a Kirali, to be fair. It's going to take its merry time to form, and then it might rapidly intensify just up towards landfall, and actually makes landfall in a very similar spot to where Kirali did. This is now 9 days out. This is for Sunday the 17th of March, so it's a very, very long way out to be making this forecast, and there will be details that change, of course. It's not going to happen like this. I'll be shocked if it does, but again, this is just to give an idea of what could happen. Right now, the risk of a Category 1 strength cyclone landfall does extend all the way down towards Mackay or Rockhampton on the Queensland coastline for a time between Friday the 15th and maybe, I'd say, Tuesday the 19th of March. But, I mean, it's a very low chance at this point. We're going to need to move a couple more days into the forecast to really get an idea. If you enjoy these uploads, keep coming back every single day. But if you just want to get the forecast out, then come back in a couple of days and there'll be more detail regarding this forecast. Maybe Monday or Tuesday morning, I'll have a great idea on what's actually going to be going on here. Because, again, this system could completely bust out depending on what the WA storms do, because they're going to have a big role to play in shaping the Queensland weather. One thing that I haven't talked about is over the next 10 days, a lot of rainfall expected across northern Kimberley and also the Northern Territory areas, and then into far northern Queensland as well. Anywhere north of around Lockhart River, or maybe down towards Moomba and Arakan as well on the Cape York Peninsula, can be expecting a dramatic amount of rainfall. We're talking up to 400 or 500 millimetres maybe in one places, and that's the same thing for the Northern Territory and also the Kimberley region of Western Australia. However, this is going to be mostly 5 to 10 day sort of forecast rainfall, with a little bit more coming through today. So yeah, quite a lot of rainfall expected up there. There is a lot of flooding that could possibly happen from this forecast situation as well. We could be seeing some riverine flooding in the Northern Territory and also into West Australia as well, with the Fitzroy River possibly going to be flooding as well from this weather event, because a lot of rainfall is going to be coming through. And also a lot of rainfall for the interior of Western Australia. I mean, look at this. I'd be shocked if this materialises. 500 millimetres in the desert. That would be absolutely nuts, that would be. But again, it's still possible, and it looks like it's mostly going to be happening over the next 3 to 5 days before around Thursday or so. Just looks like a rain band that just sits over Rowena, actually. You can tell that I'm very sidetracked here. I've never seen something like this on the forecast before, but what's getting me is the fact that this has been so consistent with the forecast models. It's kind of concerning, because if we see this amount of rainfall, you're talking an inland sea will open up around here. Very, very flat on the I think it's the Great Sandy Desert down here. There's a big plain around Ayr. It's very, very remote. It's one of the most remote sections of Australia, but we do have a major highway moving through there, the Ayr Highway, and it's likely that will likely suffer a little bit of damage or flooding with 500 millimetres of rainfall. I mean, that's 3 to 4 years worth of rainfall for this area. That's some ridiculous quantities indeed, and I really am excited to see the footage. I mean, I was thinking that I might drive out there, but that's about 1,000 kilometres away from where I am. And moving back up the top, we'll just briefly get out the details again. In terms of winds for this tropical cyclone, wind gusts, we're going to check maximum wind gusts from the Eastern Weather forecast model. They could be quite strong. You're talking up to 100 kilometres an hour with every tropical cyclone. But again, I just don't foresee this becoming a strong system as it moves in towards landfall between Cairns and Townsville. If it does even landfall, I mean, if you compare this to the GFS model, which basically has nothing, it's got a system in the Gulf of Carpentaria and that's all, and it's really happy with the West Australian system, actually. They're calling for a very strong storm to materialise out of that, and I believe that is the one that's expected to develop in the Kimberley region. So we're going to have to watch this one very closely, the West Australian system, because that is going to be very interesting. But the way that the GFS forms that, I don't think that's going to have a big impact on the Queensland one. So this is going to be quite interesting. If it forms around the Kimberley or in the Bonaparte Gulf next to Darwin, then it will likely have a big impact on the Queensland system and the Queensland weather. But if it forms south of, say, Bali and what's the island there, Java, then it will likely not have as big an impact. Again, we'll just have to wait and see. Access G3 model not calling for a landfall, but still calling for a couple of storms to form in the Coral Sea, moving south of Vanuatu, and that one does look like it could be quite strong down there, and they're really happy with a very strong cyclone from 08U. I think they're calling for at least a severe tropical cyclone here, so that's again something we're going to be watching. Plenty of cyclone activity, that's for sure, to keep ourselves entertained across Australia, and it's really going to start happening from around Monday, so these forecasts are going to be a little bit random until probably Monday or Tuesday, and then we're going to get a really good idea on what's going on, and there'll be dedicated updates to each storm as well, just so none of the details get missed or jumbled up in other storms. Make sure you are subscribed. It's a great way to support the channel. Thank you so much for the recent support. Thank you so much for 12,000 subscribers. And here's a look at the channel members on screen right now. Great people. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. To everyone on screen, it funds the software that's used to make these videos, and it's really helpful. So thank you so much to the people that are supporting the channel through the sponsorship status in the join button that you can click down below, and I'll catch you all next storm. Goodbye.